Welcome to Creating Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Paige. This is an inspirational podcast where guests come on and share their real life stories. They discuss their struggles, hardships, and traumas. They also discuss how those encounters have helped them change, grow, and the healing process they've experienced. They share where they are today in hopes of helping someone else who could be going through the same or similar situations. So join me as we inspire others weekly to become the best versions of themselves. Hey y'all, welcome into another episode of Creating Yourself podcast with me, your host Paige. Today I have on Donna, and she's going to be talking to us about her son who has a past with addiction. She's an author, she's a certified recovery support worker, an energy healing practitioner, and I'm really excited to hear her story today. Hey Donna, how are you?
I'm well. How are you? Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm good. I'm really excited to hear your story today.
Do you want me to just dive in?
Dive right in. Absolutely.
So my story is that I have a son who's a person in long-term recovery. And what that means is he hasn't used any mind-altering substances since May 11, 2008, which happened to be Mother's Day. And back when my son when all this was going on, you didn't talk about it like you do today.
Right.
So when he was 14, 15, I started to notice some changes, but didn't really know what was going on. And I'd ask him questions, are you okay? Blah, blah, blah. And plus, typically, like, when kids become teenagers, they start to distance themselves a little bit, right? Their friends are more important. That cuddly, snuggly stuff starts to change, so you don't know, like, is this just teenage growing pains or is something really going on? But my gut, I'm very intuitive, and my gut was just saying something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. And so things didn't start to unfold till he was probably about 18, was his first arrest. And thankfully, he wasn't a good criminal. He got caught. What he did.
Yeah.
And so, I asked him, are you doing drugs? Like, what's going on? And he denied it. When he was, I think, around 19 or 20, I forget what happened. He was supposed to be home, and he didn't show up for like 2 days. I didn't know where he was. And when he finally came in, I asked him, so what drug are you on? I'm not even going to say, are you doing drugs? What drug are you on?
Right.
And he broke down and started to tell me. And so we went on this nightmare of a journey, and I didn't know what I was dealing with because I didn't grow up around it. It wasn't in my immediate family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did so many things wrong, thinking I could love him into recovery. Mm-hmm. And I found out the hard way that I couldn't love my son into recovery. And so I went on this long, painful journey of rescuing him, paying off his dealers, bailing him out of jail. Thankfully, there were only two stints in jail, like overnights. He didn't have to go for any length of time, thankfully. And it just, unfolded. And so I dealt with it 10 years, but the last 5 years was hell. Yeah. And what happened is I became emotionally ill. When nobody was looking, I was in my bed in the fetal position, creating stories in my head about his addiction, and it's all my fault. I'm the mother. What did I do wrong? And then, 6 months of being in bed, like when nobody was looking, I wasn't like in bed, 24/7. I would get my husband and other child off to work and school and then dive there, you know. But I had a day where it's kind of a pivotal moment where I realized, wait a minute, I didn't crush oxy so he could snort them, and I didn't inject heroin into his veins, and it's not my fault. And there was there was this relief, like I didn't do this. I loved him, and I did everything I could. But I realized I had a secret. And back then, you just didn't tell anybody that you had a child in active addiction. Never mind, he was addicted to heroin, and he was an IV heroin user.
Yeah.
And so what I learned was we become as sick as our secret. And so, went on this journey of 2 years before he found his recovery, I hit my enough. And until parents and loved ones hit their enough, we do unhealthy helping. It's just the way it is.
Yeah,
just
it's
like
the
when our
enabling.
kids, yeah, and some people call it codependency and enabling. I prefer unhealthy helping because it's all in the name of love. We're not doing it
I
to
like
harm
that,
our
yeah.
children. We're doing it because we love them. And so I run family support programs and whatnot. And so when I utilize that language, like, usually the parents are like this and they're all worked up. And when I say, oh, are you the unhealthy helper in the family? And they'll go, what does that mean? And I explain to them, are you paying off the drug dealers? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And they go, yeah. Okay, well, that's because you love them. But we're not going to shame you about that. It's okay that you do that. But let's talk about what you can do. Maybe that might be a lot more proactive. And how do you do self-care? So it took me, like I started to say, 2 years before he found his recovery, I started working on me. I hit my enough. I had Reiki done, and it was the first time I felt some life in my body. And then I became a Reiki master. And then from there, I, became a recovery coach, and I became an advocate for the state of New Hampshire. And, it just grew organically. And now I own an organization called Sharing Without Shame. I'm the author of 4 books. I have them here. Peeling the Onion was my first one, and Sharing Without Shame and Healing Without Shame were 2 that came out last year. This is a journal that goes with it. And this is about, it has 6 parents who talk about how they navigated through their loved one or their child's active addiction, and 6 people who are in recovery, and they talk about their pathway to recovery. And then the other book I have is Just for Today, and it's just 365 days of daily reflections about codependency, enabling, and unhealthy helping.
Yeah, I
That's
love
it
that.
in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love the fact
Thanks.
that you call it unhealthy helping. I think that's a great term versus enabling, because I feel like when you say enabling, it sounds very like you're also doing like the dirty work, like you're also helping them do the drugs. And I understand what you're saying with, like, you're just wanting to make sure that they stay alive, because if you cut them off, that's very dangerous in addiction. I remember when the show Intervention came out, and it was so popular, and I feel like that was in like the early 2000s. And I remember seeing, you're enabling, like that was such a huge topic on that show, and it really, like you said, shamed people for helping their child.
It's like,
it's like pointing
people
the
are
finger.
pointing down at you,
Yeah, like very, very shaming
and
them.
you're like cower.
Right. And I've always been, and I've said this many times on my show, I've always been one to be like, drugs are a choice, not a disease. And I had a girl on my podcast back in season, I always forget if she was season 1 or season 2, and she completely changed my whole outlook on addiction and recovery. Completely changed it, the way she talked about it, the way she explained it, the way she explained her experience with it and everything. And it changed my whole perspective, and I'm so grateful for her for that, because it just opened up a whole new world to me of looking at it from a whole different light. And I love that you explain it in the way of, you're not enabling them, you're helping them, stay alive, because it really is that's really what it is. Because if you cut them off and you say, I'm not going to give you money anymore, I'm not going to go pay off your dealer because you don't have the money, like, that's dangerous for them. Like, that can either kill them from the drug dealer coming after them, or kill them because they don't have the drug and their system is so used to that it can literally kill them. Like, it's very dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the reason that it's considered a disease, it's chronic, it's progressive, and it's relapsing, just like diabetes and heart disease. And so our loved ones should have teams of doctors, just like anybody that has any one of those diseases.
Yeah. And I think the way that she explained it to me is, the first time is a choice, but after that it quickly becomes not a choice, because once it's
They
there,
lose their
you
right to
can't.
choose.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
And
never
so
looked at it like that.
so the way I explain it is that we're all born with a tiger cub in our gut, and it's asleep. And if it's in your DNA, which is probably in my son's, because my husband's family is like riddled with it, and I think probably a lot of families somewhere along the line there was somebody, right? And so as we mature, become a 2-year-old, it's a 2-year-old tiger, and as we mature, it wakes up. So, I shouldn't say that. It keeps growing with you, and then when you're the first time my son at 15, smoked cannabis, he woke the tiger up. So here's my beautiful boy, and here's his disease of addiction laying dormant. And the more he uses, they switch places. And my son's lost in the bowels of his addiction. And every once in a while, I get a glimpse of my beautiful boy. 9 times out of 10, I'm fighting with the disease, and I'm not going to win.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a friend, and I've talked about him several times on my podcast too, that I've known since high school, and he's currently in prison right now, somewhat because of his addiction, somewhat because of his just stupid behaviors, and I cut him off for 3 years and didn't speak to him because of the things that he's done. And when the girl that I spoke about, when she came on my podcast and she talked about her addiction and her recovery, and she changed my whole outlook, it caused me to reach out to him and rebuild that connection with him. And I said, I sent him $5, and I was like, I know if I send him money, he's going to reach out and be like, what in the world? Like, why did you send me money? Because I hadn't spoke to him in 3 years.
Right.
And he called me and he was like, why did you send me money? And I was like, and I told him I had this girl on my podcast and I've been doing podcasts, and I explained the whole situation. And I was like, I want you to listen. I have to forgive you for everything you've done and everything you've put me through, not for you, but for me, and for helping you through the things that I helped you through for myself. And the way she explained it is, you are allowed to forgive them if they choose to accept that, and you allow yourself back into their life. You have to give them boundaries, and the boundaries you set, they can either accept them or they don't. And if they don't, that's on them, and you're allowed to continue to walk away. If they choose to accept those boundaries, you have to stick to them. And I did. I just was like, this is what it is. If you can't accept it, I'm allowing you to come back in, but it's going to be very slow. And it has been, and it's been really nice. And I'm hoping when he gets out that things finally go the right way. So,
Yeah, I was famous at moving the finish line, and I think a lot of parents tend to do that. We move the finish line. Yeah, so I think a lot of people move the finish line because you want to give them the benefit of the doubt.
right.
And back in the day when I was going through all of this, the thing was tough love. So I ran family support for over 12 years in New Hampshire, and I always talked about unconditional love, because when someone's in active addiction, they need to be loved more, not less, because they don't love themselves. Right. And addiction is a disease of disconnection. And so, if you disconnect with them, they can get sicker. Now, to stay connected to them, I'll give you an example. One of the moms that I worked with, it was a second marriage. and her son was not allowed in the house. And so she was beside herself because he was homeless. She didn't know if he was eating, blah, blah, blah. And so we talked about it, and I said, well, did your husband say he couldn't come on the property or he just couldn't be in the house? And she said he couldn't be in the house. And I said, okay, so how about you invite your son over, you make a dinner, and you bring it out to a picnic table, and you sit and break bread with him, and you have a conversation, and don't talk about his addiction, because they don't want to hear it. All they hear is blah, blah, blah. Talk about the good times, when you laughed. Bring up funny stories. Bring some light into his life, because there's so much darkness. And so she did that, and they rebuilt their relationship. And every time he'd come over, she'd watch him walk away. Didn't know where he was going, but knew he was homeless. But eventually, he found his recovery. Because she kept planting seeds of hope, and she kept providing him with love. And so he's one of the success stories. And not everyone works that way, but I think, it's like, I'll meet you at McDonald's and we'll have a burger together. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not giving you money, but I'll give you food.
Right.
You are a human being, right? And so it's just figuring out ways. Now, I learned that what worked for me may not work for any other parent, and vice versa. Absolutely. We all have to find our way. And it works different for everybody. And nobody can stop unhealthy helping until they hit their enough. They have to be ready, because for me, and I think a lot of moms and fathers think, it's my kid. I can rescue them. That's my right. That's my duty. I'm being a good parent if I do that. And I had a gentleman, I was on the governor's recovery task force in New Hampshire for years. And this one guy who was a person in recovery said, you parents, the reason you do what you do is because it makes you feel better about yourself. And that was a big ouch. It was like, how dare he? He doesn't have children. How dare he say that to me? But I really sat on it. I held space with it and thought about it. And it bothered me. I was really pissed off at him.
I would have been
I didn't
too.
want to see him. I didn't want to look at him because, how dare you tell me? But when I thought about it, in the big scheme of things, he was right. We do things, or I did stuff, because I was so afraid if my son overdosed and died, that I knew I did everything to save him, because how could I live with myself if I didn't? And that's kind of self-centeredness on my part. If you look at it from like step work. So, and the reason I say that, I don't have a substance use disorder. However, when my son was going through his program, he went through the steps, and and at this time he's like 28 years old, and mommy wanted to make sure it was a good program and see what they're doing. I found someone to take me through the steps the way they do it in AA. And so I went through that process, and it was the greatest gift I gave myself, because I learned that nobody has to live up to my expectations. They only have to live up to theirs, right? And there were so many gifts of learning that process. And so I teach that parts of it too to parents. Like, our kids get to live the way they want to live. I'm a harm reduction trainer. I don't train it, but I am trained to be one. And I believe in some of it, but not all of it. And parents have a real hard time maybe, offering clean needles, or, saying, here's some test strips to make sure your heroin doesn't have any fentanyl. So that if you're gonna use it, try a little bit less and have somebody there. Or there's an organization called Never Use Alone, that people want to, get high. They can call them. They'll stay on the line while they're doing their thing. And if they don't have a response in 10 minutes, so many minutes, the police and the ambulance is sent to that location.
Oh, wow. I didn't know anything
That's a
about
form
something
of
like
harm
that.
reduction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and see, I think it's knowing things like that that's really important, because I didn't know something like that existed. And I think it's knowing things like that
Mm-hmm.
exist and having conversations like this that's really important, because even if you are going to use, at least there are options like that out there to know that they're somewhat safe. You know, they're not, like you said, they're not using alone, and they have, like you said, the test strips to know that at least the heroin doesn't have fentanyl in it, because fentanyl is so scary right now. Like, I feel like when I was a teenager, I'm 36 now, so when I was a teenager, like, our drugs weren't like laced with all these other scary products. Like when we, I mean, I've
Right.
never done drugs in my entire life. I've never even smoked weed. Like, people are like, what? And I'm like, swear to God, on my life, never touched the stuff. Swear. And people look at me like I have 3 heads. It's crazy. But like, you didn't have to worry about it being laced with anything. Like, it was just, if you got offered
That's
weed,
right.
it was weed, you know, like that's all it was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
nowadays, like,
Yeah.
you even have to worry about like weed being laced with fentanyl or something crazy, and it's so scary. So at least those options are out there for
Mm-hmm.
people.
Yeah.
It terrifies. I have he's almost 14. He'll be 14 literally in a month and 2 days, and it terrifies me that he's going into high school this coming school year of things like that. I'm like, I don't care what it is. If you get offered it and you feel like you have to take it from the person, just don't use it. Bring it home. We'll get rid of it if you don't want to do it. Like, something, just please don't take it. Like, if you feel the pressure to take it from them,
Yeah.
that's one thing. Take it if you feel the pressure to take it, but don't physically use it. Like, bring it home, throw it in the trash,
Yeah.
like something, because you never know what could be in it. Like, we've had so many conversations. I've had parents on my podcast that have lost children to fentanyl overdoses because they didn't know the fentanyl was in what they were taking. And I've actually had my son listen to those episodes with me and like watch videos, because I'm terrified of stuff like that happening to him. So terrified.
So to take it further, I was at a function with the New Hampshire DEA, and they were talking about it was for people who had lost a child to an overdose, and
Mm-hmm.
there were people who lost a child from vaping, because
Mm-hmm.
fentanyl was in it,
Oh my
from
gosh.
cannabis, you name it. It was there was somebody there from everything, and so one of the gentlemen was up and he said, "Your children are victims of fraud, and here's why. Because now our kids, or my kids are older, but the younger generation, your
Mm-hmm.
teenagers, even your junior high kids, little kids,
Yeah.
anybody who has access to the internet, people are selling drugs online, and so the kids can order it online and they deliver it to your house. Isn't that wonderful? And so your child says, "Hey, I'm going to go out and get a breath of fresh air. If they smoke, I'm going to go have a cigarette," and it gets delivered. So there was a young lady. She was valedictorian, beautiful girl, and she ordered a pill. She thought it was an Adderall, and she said to her friend, "I'm only going to take half just to be safe." It was pure fentanyl. And so the cartel has taken down our generations of children. And we said to them, but they're killing their customers, and they said they don't care because there's millions more, and
Right.
it's all about the money, and they don't
It's
care
the
about our
money, yeah.
children. So
Right.
there's pills that look like fentanyl, Xanax. I mean, not fentanyl, Adderall, Xanax, and Percocets, whatever, and they're stamped because there's pill labs, and they stamp them to look like what they think they're taking, and it's pure fentanyl.
Oh God.
It's very scary.
It is very scary. And I've heard a lot too, people say to check your kids' Halloween candy because you never know what could be in it. Like,
Yeah,
we always heard that as kids too.
yeah,
If it's open, don't eat it because you don't know what's in it. And now it's like you hear that with kids today, and I've heard people say drug dealers aren't going to put drugs in your kids' Halloween candy. Like, why would they do that? Why are they going to put
oh
it in the
yes,
Halloween
yeah,
candy? And I'm like, it's money. They don't care if it it's not about where it's going. It's the money they've already gotten paid to put it where it's going. They don't care where it's going. It's the money they got for it.
Right.
It has nothing to do with where it's going.
Yeah.
Like, I check my kids'
Right. And
Halloween
watch for
candy
like
piece
little
by
needle
piece.
pricks.
Yeah. I check my kids'
And
Halloween
look, the
candy
little pricks, little holes.
piece by piece. I will dump it all out on the
Yeah.
kitchen table, and I'm like, doot, 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 doot. And people are like, "You're
I always
ridiculous," and I'm
hated
like, "No, I'm
Halloween.
not. No, I'm not." Mm-mm.
Yeah. And I know some hospitals you can bring it up and they'll X-ray it. I don't know if they still do that. When my kids were little, they
I've
did it,
never
but
heard of
mine
that
are
either.
39 and 41. Yeah. Yeah.
That's good to know. I mean, I would at least go ask. I mean, they might look at me like I have 3 heads, but I'd be like, "Listen, I heard it was a thing. I'm checking."
Yeah. Yeah. When my youngest, I I always had a party. They didn't even know that Halloween existed till they were like in 3rd grade because I always had a Halloween party because I just never liked it. And finally let them go out one night with a friend, and the parents were supposed to go, and they didn't. And my youngest got mugged. And it was, teenagers that, pushed them around a little bit and stole all the candy. So,
Gosh,
I don't know, it's a crazy
yeah,
world.
it is. It's so scary. It's like I
It's
just
tough,
don't.
and I feel bad.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's these little kids, that as well as I do. When we're teenagers, we think we're invincible. It's not going to happen to me.
For sure.
And my son was he wanted to fit in. He was bullied in 6th grade. That's when he started using.
Yep.
Because of being bullied, and we put him in a private school, which was a huge mistake, because then he ended up with a lot of kids with a lot of money that could buy the drugs, and it just, it started spiraling out of control, and then one of his arrests, then he ended up, they removed him from the school because he had been arrested without being found guilty, which I thought was kind of lousy. But
Yeah.
and he was also supposed to go in the Air Force, and he couldn't go in because he was on Ritalin when he was younger, for like it's all this crazy stuff. But things may have changed now, but I think it's so much more dangerous. And I have some workshops, and one of the things I do is, when you know better, you do better. And that's really important for parents, to educate themselves to how for better coping skills, because we get really sick. And I had a mom commit suicide because she just couldn't take the pain. And there were days when I was in my bed that I was in the fetal position, and I could literally feel my heart breaking. And I thought I was going to die of a broken heart, or I was going to end up in a psych ward.
Yeah.
And broken heart syndrome is a real thing.
It is.
It's not,
That's
it's real.
crazy. I never realized, like, you always hear it when you're younger that it's like a thing, and then when you get older, you realize that it's like a legitimate thing. Yeah.
A painful thing.
Yeah.
Very painful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so basically what I've done over the years is taken what once was my mess, and I made it my message. And my goal is to help other parents not go through what I went through. We become emotionally and financially depleted, and that's not a good time. So, I offer coaching, and I do it on Zoom, or I have an office here in Concord, New Hampshire, where I have people can come in, and I add a little, when they come into my office, I do a little energy healing in the process of the coaching, which is very cool. I balance their chakras while they're purging all their stuff
Yeah.
that they need to get out.
Yeah. Yeah, so talk about that a little bit. Talk about like the Reiki healing and that sort of stuff, because that kind of stuff just interests me so much. Like, I love all that kind of stuff.
So when I was in so much pain, a friend said to me, "You need to have Reiki." And I was like, I don't want anyone touching me right now. I'm going to break if someone comes near me.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going and paying the $50. And it was, I've never been through anything like that. That was my first experience. Now, I've been intuitive all along, and I, spiritually connected, but I never knew about this piece.
Mm-hmm.
And so after that, I had like this burning desire to learn more. And I kept signing up for Reiki classes, and I canceled them because they never felt right. And I happened to be going to my chiropractor one day, and this little woman comes bouncing by, and I looked at her and I said, "Are you a Reiki master?" I don't know why I asked her that.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Yes, I am." And I said, "Will you teach me?" And she said, "Yes." So she took me through it, and it was like, childhood trauma, like some of my mother wound stuff came out, and I was able to heal that stuff. And not that my mom was a bad mom, it just, sometimes people, if they don't heal their childhood, it trickles down to their children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I started doing Reiki. I had a hair salon, so I incorporated that into my salon, and then started energy healing. And so I have a chakra mat, which is really cool, and it has I forget how many, like 270 crystals in it of all the different chakras, and people sit on that, and I do a guided meditation, and I take them through to balance their chakras, because there's many times that we feel like we're sick, just kind of feel like ugh, and we don't know why. We don't feel good, but we don't know why. And it's typically because our energy field is off, our chakras are not balanced. So I take them through that, and with parents who are really sick and suffering, I'll do some air therapy, which is I used to do it with acupuncture needles, but now I only do seeds and magnets because people bleed, and I just don't want to deal with blood.
Yeah.
So I do that, and it's amazing because I put it in the back of the ear, some pressure points in the ear. And I had one mom recently that, her daughter was prostituting herself, had a baby, and took off, and just horrible stuff was happening. And I said, "Let's try this." And I look over, and she's like zenned out. and she goes, "It feels so good." And it was just because I had put the magnets on her ears.
Huh.
Yeah, so it's cool stuff.
I would love to try that.
I have plasma energy balls that create plasma energy, and I have a chakra harp, and I can do the tone to do different tones for healing and stuff like that. But primarily, I don't do hands-on anymore because a very dark energy took over. Even though you block yourself, but this one came into my body for about a week, and it was very difficult. So I don't do hands-on Reiki anymore.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah, it was not a good time.
That sounds scary.
It was.
Yeah.
Because it was interesting because this person is so kind.
Really?
But obviously there was so much darkness in her life that, that shadow stuff, shadow work that needed to come out. And it was pretty dark stuff that she never dealt with. So,
yeah. They say that stuff can be like so weird and wild and like real. Oh gosh. I got like chill bumps. Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah, that's all been my healing process
for
with my son's addiction. And I wouldn't change a thing, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because it took, his addiction shook me like a rag doll. And I had to learn how to put one foot in front of the other, I had to learn how to work a recovery program to heal my broken heart, and how to love him unconditionally with healthy boundaries. And all these hads that I felt I had to do changed who I am. And I feel that over these, 18 years I've been doing this, I like who I am today. Much better than who I was back there 18 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I have so many people that come on and say that same thing, that like even though they've been through these really traumatic experiences, or they've lost, this piece of themselves, they've been through addiction or abuse or whatever the case may be, they wouldn't change anything about it, because it's really turned them into who they are today. And the person they are today is just this amazing, incredible person because of what they've been through. And I feel the same way. Like I said, I've been through a lot, and I, although I don't ever obviously want to go through it again, I wouldn't change any of it, just because it's literally made me who I am today. And it's created this very strong, independent person. And I have this amazing perspective on life and this outlook that has made me gain so much sympathy and empathy for people that I don't even know. That before I was like, well, I don't know them. Why do I care? And now it's like I have such a different outlook on life, and I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, here's a theory I have, is that people who have a substance use disorder are empaths or empathic. So I'm a high-level empath, highly sensitive.
I am too. Yeah.
And so what do you do when you're sensitive? When you have a substance use disorder, you self-medicate because they can't handle life, right? Boys are told you don't cry, man up when they're little, and they're supposed to be, these big, strong, macho guys.
Yeah.
And they're sensitive, and they're creative, and they're lovely and wonderful, and many of them in the recovery, so recovery community centers are things that have been prevalent throughout our state and throughout our country now. And so when people go to recovery community centers, a lot of them are finding out that they're artists, or they have these musical talents, or, I used to put on a variety show for people in recovery, and it was amazing, the stuff, the talent that would come out,
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people who have a substance use disorder are empaths or empathic. They just don't know it.
Yeah. I'm very empathic when it comes to things. I'm like a highly sensitive person. Like I'm super emotional, like sensitive to things. And like I didn't realize it until the last couple of years either. Like I somehow stumbled across a video, I think on TikTok, of a highly sensitive person. And I was like, what the hell is that? Never heard of it. And I started looking into it, and I was like, holy shit, that is me. 100% that is me. That is my youngest child, because you can look at him the wrong way and it is waterworks. And he like cowers and he's in a little ball. And I'm like, that is me. That is my kid. And I've talked about this several times on my podcast. We went to a Renaissance fair in Ohio. I'm in Kentucky. We went to a Renaissance fair up in Ohio. And we were talking about, it was me, his brother, and his grandmother, his dad's mom, and then my boyfriend at the time, who I was with then, not with anymore. And we were talking about how he's very sensitive and like empathic on the way there. We get there, we go into this little shop that they had that was full of crystals. I mean, there was probably hundreds of crystals in this little shop. He walks around that, like, they're along the wall and the outside. He's walking, he's looking. My other son's just like picking them all up, looking at them. He don't care. They're pretty rocks to him. He could care less. And he's walking and he's looking at all of them. And he gets like probably halfway through the little shop, and he picks up one and he's like, I want this one. And I walk over and I'm like, okay. And I pick up the little paper that says what it's for. It's to improve, like help empaths with their ability. I was like, I am done. What the heck? Like, it freaked me and his grandma out.
I love it.
Out of all the crystals in that shop, that was the one he picked up. And it was to help empaths with their ability. And I was like, holy crap. Like, it freaked us out to no end.
Yeah.
Like, I looked at her and I was like, read
Yeah.
this piece of paper. And she was like, I was like,
Yeah.
that's the one he picked out. I swear to God. It was wild. It was crazy.
Yeah.
The weirdest thing.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, all my life, because I was sensitive, I was told, let it go, Donna. You're too sensitive. I grew up thinking I had a character defect. And unfortunately, you know, I didn't find out until, you know, maybe the last 5 years that I'm an empath. And so I feel energy through my hands. If my hand, like I could touch something and my hands go on fire.
Mine get
and I
tingly.
went into a bookstore and I walked.
Like numb almost.
Yeah. And so I walked by this book by Dr. Judith Orloff, and it was the empath's survival guide. And my hands were on fire. And I bought it. That's when I realized I was an empath. And I read the book and I was like, oh my God, I don't have a character defect. Everybody else has the problem. They didn't want to deal with a sensitive person because they didn't know how to.
Yeah.
And you know, and I'm so glad that you see this in your little boy at such a young age, so he doesn't grow up like I did. I didn't learn I was an empath till I was 65 years old.
Yeah.
You know, that's a long time to carry that mess.
Yep. Like, before we started recording, he came in here and told me he was going outside to play on the trampoline. He's still out there laying on the trampoline, just chilling, just laying out there. Like, he's probably so grounded right now, he doesn't even know what's happening. He doesn't even know what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just out there laying,
that's
just
beautiful.
chilling. Yeah. Like, he's probably got his phone.
Good for him.
I guarantee that's what it is. But the fact that he's, like, outside in his, like, in nature, because we live on a farm, he's probably just so grounded, just chilling out there. He doesn't even realize what's actually happening to him.
And how old is he?
He'll be 9 in September.
Yeah, so a lot of the younger kids are coming in awakened. You know, they're starseed children, and they're coming in awakened. So hopefully they shift how the universe is, and people will be kinder and more loving, because hopefully they change the structure of everything.
Yeah, he's so, like, calm and mellow and chill. And, like, if I don't feel good, or if I tell him that I'm having, like, an off day, because I'm really honest with my kids. If I'm having, like, a bad day, like, mentally, or I'm just not myself, I'll tell them, like, look, Mom's not having a good day. I need y'all to, like, chill, be calm today, because mentally, I'm not here. And if y'all are too much today, I'm going to be yelling. Like, I'll just straight up tell them, because that way they know that, like, we all just need to, like, tone it down a notch today, because Mom's not here. Mom's in another world today. And they're really good about that. And he'll be like, do you need me to get you a water? Do you have a headache? Do you need some Tylenol? Like, he's so just, like, and if I'm, like, actually sick, like, with, like, a cold or something, he is, like, on it with, like, do you need something? Do you need a wash rag? Do you need medicine? Like, he's so just there and, like, by my side. And my other kid's, like, in his bedroom, he could care less. He's like, whatever. Mom's sick, cold.
My oldest grandson, I just grabbed this. So for Christmas, when he was, I can't remember, he was 3 or 4. And he went and he picked this out, and he told his mother, he goes, I want to buy this stone for Gigi. And I was going through some emotions, doing some healing, working on healing and shadow work. And this is a moonstone. And exactly what I was going through when I was working on the healing is what this stone represented.
Yeah.
He's like 3 years old.
Yeah. It's wild.
I have crystals everywhere. I have an altar over here.
I have a shelf behind me that you can't see with all my stuff on it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool stuff, you know, and I love that more and more people are getting into this piece of it, and because it feels better.
Yeah, I just recently started buying my boyfriend, I recently started buying him some like crystals and stuff that like help with like anger and mood, because he has like a short fuse sometimes, and I bought him one that deals with that, and then another that is he just recently got divorced like 7-8 months ago. So he's been dealing with that kind of stuff, and he's actually my youngest son's father. We were together about 7 years ago, and we just recently like reconnected. Um, and so I bought him one recently that has to do with like confidence and rebuilding confidence and things like that. And I'll slowly like slip them in his truck or in his bedroom at his mom's house, because that's where he's living back at now for now. And he's like, "You're ridiculous with these crystals," and I'm like, "You just wait. You just wait. I'll have your whole room
Now,
filled with crystals before it's done."
yeah, right. There's a book called "You Can Heal Your Life" by Louise Hay. It's one of the tools my son used for his recovery, and he used to write positive affirmations. And there's a movie, and it talks about the insecurities, and it's really cool. It helped me a lot. But you could do stuff like that. And I just found cards, because my oldest, who's in recovery, he's very connected spiritually. He's my empath. And I just bought him some cards for men, some oracle cards for men. And I think they're like God cards, and they talk about, different stuff, but they look really cool.
Yeah.
And then this shadow book that I'm working on is also, I'd recommend that, because it asks questions like, what about your personality are you embarrassed about, or what regrets do you have? And it asks all these questions, and then it helps you work on healing all of them. And if you want, when we're done, I can send you the
Absolutely, for sure.
stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sometimes it's all about planting the seeds to help them, because they don't know.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
They don't know what
Yeah.
they don't know.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm trying to
And
do.
then,
I'm like, here's all the things I've used to help me. Like,
yeah. And and it might not work for him, but it might plant some seeds that he finds what does work for him.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I've seen his self confidence go over this whole situation, but it's in there, and I know it. It's just finding it. So.
And we all go through that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Everybody goes through that. I mean, but it just don't stay there too long.
Right.
And bring it up. And I remember when I was going through the stuff with my son, I went to this woman's meeting. I was just looking for healing stuff, and so they handed a mirror to everybody, and they said, "Look in the mirror and say your name." So I would look in the mirror and go, "I love you, Donna." And it was like, "I love you, Donna." You don't want to look at yourself, right? Because you didn't have that self-love. You might like yourself, but you were in love with yourself. And so all around the room, none of the women, some of them wouldn't even hold the mirror up. And I worked on that. Every day I would look in the mirror and, tell myself I love myself. And it was hard. But I've gotten to the place that I do like myself, and I do love myself. And when we do that, we're able to provide self-care for ourselves.
Right.
We're able sometimes to put ourselves first, because sometimes that's where we need to be, instead of taking care of everybody else.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I agree with that. And I think that's one of the hardest things when you're trying to find your self-confidence again, and your self-worth, and yourself, and like loving yourself is remembering who you are, and like telling yourself that you do love yourself. That is the hardest part of it, is the healing journey, is really loving who you are and rebuilding yourself after any like
And
traumatic
accepting.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and some people, they haven't had any trauma in their lives, and they don't love themselves, right? They can have these fabulous lives and grow up with everything, and they're emotional messes.
Yeah.
There's no there's no everybody can be affected. It's like addiction. it doesn't matter what your social status is, your financial status, or any of that. If it's going to get you, it's going to get you. Just like depression or mental illness, doesn't matter what, that you're wealthy or not. Look like you have your stuff together. It is what it is.
Exactly.
It's all in how we move forward with it.
Yeah. So how is your son today? Like, where's he at today, and how's he doing today?
He's wonderful. He's 16 years of recovery, uninterrupted recovery. He's a dad. Him and his brother, who I thought would never speak or be in the same room with each other, are best friends. They own a HVAC business. They're highly successful in life. Awesome. They're investors, and they own a lot of properties. And he has 3 beautiful little boys who are 9 months and soon to be 5 and 7, and a lovely wife, and just bought a 23-acre farm, and
oh, cool.
He's doing great. Yeah, he's doing. He's wonderful, and and I almost lost him the night before he went to recovery. We had a bad day, and he came home after this horrible fight. And I asked him to go out to dinner because my husband and I always did date night on Saturday nights, even when our kids were older. It's very important that you keep that connection. And I've been married 45 years.
That's awesome. So, listen, that's incredible.
Uninterrupted.
Yeah.
Uninterrupted.
Of itself, that doesn't happen very often nowadays either.
Right. Yeah. And I went up to tell my husband because he was getting changed to go out, and I said, he's going to come out to dinner with us. He goes, no, I'm not sitting across the room from him if he's high. And he goes, you know what? And my husband is the kindest, most loving man, and for all these years never said a word. Just let me make a mess. And he went to work and just did his thing. And he said, I'm not doing this anymore. It's me or him. I'm done. And as I'm walking down the stairs, I'm calling him every name I can think of in my head, and but by the time I got to the bottom of the stairs, I looked at my son and I said, I found a treatment facility for you. They have a bed. All you have to do is call. I can't do this with you anymore. As much as I love you, I can't participate in your active addiction any longer. I hope you'll do what the right thing, and Dad and I are going out to dinner, and I'm sorry, but you can't come. And it was really hard. And so we left and went out for dinner, and he called and said, I called and I'm going into treatment in the morning. And I didn't know this till 8 years later, that night, I guess there were a lot of drugs in my house, in my basement, in the rafters, out in the lawn, in holes or whatever.
Oh, wow.
And he took every drug in hopes that he could take his life. And he had it left him. Sorry.
No,
so
okay.
I would have found my beautiful boy on Mother's Day. But by the grace of God, he didn't succeed.
Yeah.
He woke up and thought maybe, and even though he didn't believe in God at the time, he just said, I'll go. And he went, and he's been in recovery for 16 years, but I would have found my son on Mother's Day with a no. Yeah.
Thank God you did it. Thank God you did it.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a miracle.
Yeah.
And I think we have to look at the miracles and always hold on to our hope, because we never know when our kids are going to find their pathway to recovery. And some pathways may be going to jail. It might be, sometimes you don't have to go to treatment. I know a kid that he just went to AA. There's many pathways to recovery.
Yeah.
And it's how they figure it out is the most important.
Right. Yep. Yep, I think it is. I think that's the most important part, is I think they and I've always heard they have to be the one to do it. They have to hit the rock bottom, and they have to be the ones to figure it out. Can't force them.
Yeah, and rock bottom scares me because sometimes they don't bounce back. I like to say when they hit their enough, when they've had enough, they'll get help.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they're sick of living that lifestyle and sick of eating out of a dumpster or being arrested or, they just, and it has nothing to do with us. Because I used to say, if you loved me and your family, you wouldn't do this. And it has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important too for people to hear is it has nothing, it's all about them. And I think a lot of it has to do with how they feel about themselves, which is sad.
Yep, it's all internal. It's all internal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sad.
Yeah. Listen, Donna, I've loved having you on. I think that his story is incredible. His 16 years is a long time. It's definitely a miracle story. So I love hearing it.
Yeah.
I obviously wish him nothing but the best continuing forward, as well as you. I think your story is incredible too. Tell everybody where they can find you. If you want to show off your books again, you're more than welcome to also.
www.sharingwithoutshame, the name of my book, Sharing Without Shame, .com. And it has everything about me. It has all the workshops that I offer. And
Awesome.
I offer, one-to-one coaching. I'll do family coaching. Whatever people need, I will create a program for them. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out and in hopes that they can move forward. And sometimes it's just baby steps.
Yep, I agree. I'll put all of that in the show notes as well. I've loved having you on. So I thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. I've loved being here.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this week's episode. Make sure you hit the follow button on whatever listening platform you are using. And head over to my social media pages and give me a follow there as well. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and now TikTok at Creating Yourself Pod. And if you have a story you would like to share on this podcast, email me at creatingyourselfpod@gmail.com, or you can message me on any of my social media pages. Make sure and come back next Tuesday for a brand new episode. Hope you guys have a great week. Bye.